Why Yandere Simulator? Why is that the comparison you made?
I was like clenching my ass cheeks, hoping that you didn't say this.
You enjoyed Romeo and Juliet more than Hamlet?
Sarah J. Maas fun.
My brain is like racing now.
Oh no, Alex!
Good job, me. I really don't know how to speak.
Oh God! Can't do this. This is my guilty boner. Family listens to these. Never mind.
Don't you me?
We totally believe you, Dean.
That's still bigger than a city.
It's more than one planet.
I think for me, being a writer, especially a person of color writer, certainly puts a lot of weight on my shoulders. And, you know, keep in mind, I'm not published or anything, but that's one thing that definitely does worry me. Like, if I do end up being published, and especially if I attract a significant fan base, then odds are it'll likely be a lot of people of color too. Because, you know, I don't know if you guys know anything about Filipinos, but like the second we know of Filipino celebrity, we're like, oh my God, who is it? Who is it? Who is it? And then we figure it out and worship them for like a good amount of time. But knowing that and with that mentality, it kind of worries me with the kind of content that I put out in general, right? Like I want to make sure I'm setting a decent example for other people like me. And I say it's like a broad thing because obviously I worry about that a lot, and I'm pretty sure a lot of other people too. But being a Filipino creative writer, especially one that is writing, you know, especially one that's working on a young adult fantasy about a same thing starring a half white, half black, basically person of color as the main protagonist, with a heavier focus on people of color in general, or at least how I'm wanting it to be. Like, I'm hoping that, or one of my biggest anxieties so far is just hoping it all works.
Yeah.
Yeah. It makes sense.
Yeah. So I think other than that, like, I think another thing would definitely be like setting a good example, right? Because it's not just about everything that I'm putting out there, right? Like, or it all kind of ties into putting out good content, but at the same time, like, I'm hoping that the book that I put out, at least, or I guess I'm just going to focus on the book because I don't want to like talk about, you know, videos and all that stuff right now. But like with the book, I've stated multiple times that I want it to be a good example for like for people like me right now, and for people that are, or that would be younger than me, because, you know, I've stated either on or off podcast that I really do want a lot more representation in my stories, and, you know, not just with Filipino characters and settings, because we don't have enough of that, but really, like, if we were to get a lot of that, or if I were to get a lot more of that, I would want like, I would want it to be best represented so that it inspires a lot of people. And if I'm not like, if I can't set that example, then, you know, I guess that's just something that worries me too. Right?
Yeah.
Like, it would essentially be like, you know, I probably wouldn't be the first kind of trailblazer in that regard, but like, if I am, then that just puts even more worries on me, I guess. But
Yeah. A lot of the things you said, I think I also have anxieties about. I mean, obviously, I'm not a person of color, but I also want to strive for more diversity in books and in storytelling in general. And so I'm really anxious about, you know, making sure to portray those characters correctly, I guess. And I already forgot what the first thing you said was, but I had something to say about that too.
Oh,
Like,
damn, yeah, I forgot about the first thing I said too.
yeah, like, and then, yeah, but yeah, I think that's my main point, is like wanting to have diverse characters in your stories, in my stories, and wanting to make sure that I do that in a way that's like respectful, especially because I am a white person. And yeah, finding I just want to be respectful. Sometimes it's something you don't even think about until it's too late.
Hmm. Yeah, like often you can get so swept up in, creating amazing action scenes and creating like intricate magic systems, which, we'll get to, that in a future episode. But I think at the heart of it, like for me at least, and Gabe, we can get your input on this in a second, but like it really, I think there's a bigger focus on like who exactly is leading the show at this point. In a way, like you can't, like it'll mean a lot more to a more diverse audience if it were someone with their skin color or their ethnicity being the savior or being the romantic lead rather than just another white person, I guess. And obviously that's not to like damn all white people, but that has been a pretty common thing in a lot of storytelling.
I know I'm gonna agree with that. And I feel comfortable saying fuck all white people as a white person, so
Yeah.
Gabe, how about like you have anything to weigh on that or
I don't know if I can say anything that hasn't already been said, and like as far as the diversity pool goes, I'm probably like the least diverse member of this podcast. So I guess there definitely is like a strong feeling of like oh fuck, I really better like not be an ignorant little dumbass about some of this shit because I really don't know shit about a lot of shit.
yeah.
Like I'm mixed, but you don't. I pass, so like you would never know it. So I've basically just not had the like any. I've never experienced any form of racism, and
There's a term
I'm
for that
straight.
white. I think that's white passing.
White passing, yeah.
Okay.
And like I've never been on the receiving end of any like homophobia or sexism. So it's like there's a sort of like I lack heavily in certain life experiences that would like apply to a lot of diversity. So there's always that big concern that like am I giving proper credence to like groups that I'm trying to represent in my stories that I am not a part of and I have no personal experience being a part of, like
yeah, it's hard sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say like it's not like a impossible thing. Like there's documentaries and stuff. There's resources and there's all kinds of stuff that you can like read about and ask about and look into. Like it's not like a impossible to experience to learn about, but it's I don't know. There's always like that feeling that like that lingering feeling that I'm misrepresenting something that I have basically no understanding of.
Mm-hmm.
yes, I relate to that a lot as well.
Yeah, it's what I was going to comment on earlier is basically like it's hard to write for someone that you're not, if that makes any sense. Like as a Filipino person, I could probably, represent my voice as a Filipino, but when it comes to representing my voice for a half black, half white person, that's a little bit more tricky. And like that's certainly, tying it back, like that's certainly something that I have worrying when it comes to my main protagonist, Porter. Like she is, as I've stated before, she is half black, half white. And I so far have just kind of been writing Porter as I see her through, as I see her within the context of the world that I've built in, but considering how she is, or she ideally has a darker skin color and how her mom is the black half to her, like I would need to account for, I would obviously need to account for the kind of, I guess just the kind of like role that entails, right? Because I can't just write. Yeah, I don't know where I'm going with that, but yeah, it's difficult basically writing for someone that you're not, right? Like you can't like if you were a white person, you can't exactly like, I think on your own you can't write for a person of color's voice. You could probably ask for their experience, right? And then go off of what you do that. But when you try to do it yourself, you would definitely need to do a lot of research.
Yeah.
Because just
Yeah.
writing based on assumption like that can be dangerous. And that's
Yeah,
another
that never
anxiety.
goes well.
Yeah, that's an anxiety I have too, actually, like writing based on assumption. Like so back when I was writing mainly for friends, I didn't really account for, I guess, too much in terms of like, what to say and what not to say. And obviously I wasn't being like, I obviously wasn't like writing in terrible, hateful language, but I guess it's just because the stakes were so low at the time, I didn't really have to worry about it, because with, when writing for your friends, they're kind of like, oh, that's so cool or something. And, here's a cool story that, that their friend Dean wrote. Like that's probably something that they could have at least lied about and said that it was good. But because Xeno is hopefully going to be my debut project and the thing that I want to be working on for a good chunk of my life, like I can't always just make stuff up. I have to account for a lot of things, right? And tying it back into what we were talking about earlier on how you can't really write you can't write someone that you don't know. I have plenty of diverse characters of both skin color and gender identity. And when I eventually reach those points, I'm very much going to need a lot of critical and creative input on that, because I can't do that myself, right? Like I can only speak for my characters to a certain degree, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
I think this is says something really interesting about how writing has changed, in that I think it's become, I think with the need to diversify writing, and the realization that people have come to that we need to have more diversity in writing, is that writing has started to become a lot more of a collaborative process, where it's not just one person writing something, it's one person writing something and then getting other people's input and editing and that kind of stuff. And it's really expanded beyond just one person being able to write something entirely by themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I know it's a bit of a weird thing, but if you look at the journalism industry, which is the program that I'm taking in high school or in university, there are so many different factors that go into a story before it's sent out. Like you have the initial reporter who sent it, you have the people whose voice is obviously the one telling the story. Then you have people fact checking it, you have people checking your copy, and then you have a few editors that would send it back to you before it initially goes to print or through online, just to make sure that there aren't any errors, everything is making sense. And I think especially with novel writing, I think that would probably be a process that I personally would be a lot more comfortable with. Like I don't want to send something out that only one person has seen, basically. And what do you guys think on that? Or I'll ask for you guys' input in a second, but I don't want just a single editor and maybe 2-3 beta readers to verify that the story is good. I want a lot of people's input on it, because relying on such a small group would probably unnerve me a bit. So when Xeno eventually does finish, I would want, obviously I would want your guys' creative input or creative and critical input on it, but then, maybe consult some of my high school friends, and then maybe then get another freelance editor or something. But yeah, what do you guys think?
Isn't there a thing that's a thing now, where people can get advanced copies of books and give their input and an honest review of it before the book is released? Isn't that a thing?
Like early access reading?
something like that. Yeah, I know there's like a bunch of like booktube people that participate in it.
Mm-hmm. I know, but I can't verify that there are people who are willing to beta read, like across the internet. Like you don't know them, but you know they'll read your story, right? But
Yeah, I
yeah,
think like since you're asking for input on that, I think I agree that it's important to have like a variety of readers in
mm-hmm.
something before like the final version is released. Just because again, if you're one person, you can only write from one perspective.
Yeah,
So getting other people's opinions on people who can maybe relate to the perspective you're trying to write that isn't your perspective, I think that's really important.
Yeah.
mm-hmm.
I was about to say, I think it's also important to recognize, like, as an author, like, you're going to make mistakes in regards to like diversity and stuff like that. And like, I think as long as you actually listen to the input of like people whose experiences you might not have, and you actually listen to their input, and you listen to like the advice of people who might know better than you, as in areas like you can improve. But I think it's important to like recognize and accept like you're going to fuck up in this area. And the best thing to do is to try to not continuously fuck up in the same way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I've been leading, I think, with a couple points already. Like, do you guys have one that you want to discuss? Like, Alex, how about you? Do you have one?
Yeah, I think one of my biggest writing anxieties is feeling like I'm not gonna live up to expectations.
Ooh.
And like I can expand on this because I mean on this podcast alone, you guys like I've shared like some of my world building stuff with you guys, and you guys are always praising it.
Mm-hmm.
Or like another example is Dean, you just put together this amazing playlist for my story, and it has all this like epic music to it, and it sounds like awesome. And I'm so afraid that my story isn't going to live up to these expectations that I feel like you guys have of like based on my world building and based on this playlist of just how epic like the music is. It seems like yeah, that's one of my big anxieties is feeling like I'm not going to live up to people's expectations based on things that people already know.
I didn't realize my playlist was that counterintuitive. I'm sorry.
It's still great. I love this. I've been listening to it on repeat, and
Yeah.
it makes me really want to write. But I'm also just like, this song is so epic. I don't have any like epic battles planned, and now I feel like I need them.
Mm-hmm. See, to add on to that, like in my own way, I kind of have that own expectation too. Like I have, like in direct relation actually to writing to music, you guys know that I do that a lot. And with my series, you know, with my overall like series for Xeno, I have scored the entire thing to a single song. And it worries me that the beats that I have per story, and especially in tune with the song, like I am so worried personally that it's not all going to like, you know, it's not maybe I'm just not envisioning it as greatly as I have. But like, yeah, to ask more on that, Alex, like how on not meeting expectations, like is it just ours? It's obvious not just ours you're worried about, right?
No. It's definitely people's in general. But it's like I have one memory of in creative writing class one year, I shared one of my stories, and one of the people in the class, like people seemed to like it for the most part, but one of the people in the class started speculating about where the story was gonna go, based on this one scene that I had shared. Um, and I was like, I could understand where he was coming from, but I was like, that's nowhere close to what I have planned. And then I start worrying that like my what I have planned isn't going to be as good as what people might imagine I have planned.
Oh yeah. Like, oh man, I relate to that so much. Like when someone suggests a scene or a development or a beat basically that you didn't come up with before, and you're worried that like if this might save or ruin the story.
Yeah.
Gabe, how about you? Like what do you think on meeting or not meeting expectations?
I definitely feel that sometimes. Because like, I mean, I'm not the securest in my own writing for sure, but I've definitely heard that a lot of people like my writing. I recently got a note back from one of my classmates on my on a recent short story I wrote. That kind of sucked, but like the note like ended with that he was saying that he wanted to be very upfront about the problems in it because he's used to me being an exceptional writer and he knows what I'm capable of, and I'm like, don't set me up like that, man. I'm only human. I'm gonna fuck up, and now it feels like my fuck ups are like so much more monumental because unbeknownst to me, I've created a standard for myself for other people with my writing.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
exactly. That's exactly what it is for me.
Can
Where
we
I feel
actually
like
explore that tangent? Or can we actually explore this? Because I think now that I'm kind of thinking about it, how we've all lifted each other up in terms of like the content that we read from each other, like how has that changed? Or like how has that affected us? And I'll let Alex finish. I'm sorry I interrupted.
yeah, I was just gonna say, like, kind of going on that is like you guys and like people that I've shared my world building and stuff with have always been like, oh wow, your world building's so amazing and that kind of stuff. And it's like, I mean, I appreciate my world building too because I've put so much time and effort into it, that I kind of hope that people appreciate it. But then I feel like actually this is something I've been struggling with in like storyboarding recently, is that I have the Diamond Dagger, which is set in this like high fantasy world, that I've done a lot of world building for. And like when people were reading the first few chapters that I submitted in class, people seemed to really like the world that I was setting it in. And then I
Mhm.
started thinking about like my future plans for where I wanted the story to go. And I was like, well, I feel like it needs to be set in the same world because the world is what people seem to like about it. And so it makes me feel like insecure about wanting to dive into, you know, like interplanetary travel in the same story, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And, you know, different time periods and stuff. I'm like, is that going to be appealing to the same writers that like the Diamond Dagger or the same readers that like the Diamond Dagger?
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Gabe, how about you? Do you want to expand on what you were talking about with the comments that you were getting from class? Because I know a lot of people, me included, love your writing.
Yeah. Well, I wrote a short story. Basically for those listening, in our creative writing class, we have a project called the Blind Submission and Editorial project, and essentially the object of the project is to submit a 3-page long short story, with no name on it, so no one knows it's you when you submit it. And I submitted a story that I wasn't totally happy with because I basically had written it the night before submission, and then when I got back a lot of negative criticism on it, which I'm fine with. I'm not like someone who's a big baby. I hate negative criticism, but um, the thing that I got back the most when I told people that I was the one who wrote it, the biggest thing I got back was that was people telling me that they were so used to me being like such an exceptional writer, so that they wanted to be very upfront about these things, and I was like. And it kind of threw me off a little bit because I don't know, I was worried that I was letting people down by writing a story that I wasn't happy with.
Mm-hmm.
And so it almost like I was totally fine with negative criticism, but once it became negative criticism mixed with like secondhand positive critiques for other pieces that weren't the pieces being criticized in that conversation, that's when it became like sort of weird in my brain.
It's like
Yeah.
disappointment on top of the criticism, I feel like, where they're like, I know you can write better than this.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Oh, yeah.
That's so
I've
much worse
definitely
than
got
just
that
negative criticism.
before.
I will gladly take negative criticism any day. I like bathe in pain and negatively criticize myself constantly. So I can take like if someone wants to just rip my story apart,
You just
I'm glad to hear it.
I'm sorry.
What I-
I'm thinking on the thing. I'm thinking on the whole bathe in pain thing, and I'm thinking of Gabe like bathing in a bath of needles.
Oh yeah,
Oh
I
God. Okay. No.
not
Moving on.
needles. That's a
sorry.
terrible image.
Yeah, I'm
I thought you
sorry.
were
I'm
just gonna say
sorry.
like I thought you were just gonna say hot water, like just boiling hot water, because
Yeah,
that's a funny image.
I don't know what your threshold was, man.
But, no, but like I think it's when it became like I am surprised that you wrote this, that I was like, oh, I let people down. Fuck.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. I've experienced that before as well. Like especially in that class, or
Yeah.
like I've submitted or okay, because I'm gonna talk about like our prof specifically here for a minute, because I've had her twice. And so the first year I had her, she loved my blind submission. And my blind submission did really well in that class. And then the second year I had her, my blind submission did not do as well. And I felt like from Micheline and from the other people who had like read my other blind submission, I really felt like there was an air of disappointment
Mhm.
around that. And it's just kind of like, I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah.